But many grieving parents believed there was a connection. Pat Pulling's teenage son committed suicide, and she spoke publicly, claiming that his game playing contributed to his death.
It has been linked in suicide notes, police reports, and coroner's reports.
Young people commit suicide for a whole variety of reasons. In my research, I saw nothing that led anyone towards depression or suicide.
Northwestern University professor of sociology, Gary Allen Fine, wrote a book called Shared Fantasy and studied the D&D subculture.
They were the kind of kids and young people who didn't go to dances or date on the weekends. It was part of a nerd culture, I guess you would say.
I can still throw death spells on Steve.
The D&D culture intrigued filmmakers and fiction writers. Rona Jaffe's book, Mazes and Monsters, was loosely based on what people thought had happened to Dallas Egbert. It was made into a movie, starring a young Tom Hanks.
Let the journey begin. Well, which way do we go?
They went down the storm tunnels and got to play D&D in the tunnels. We had to sit around a table. Like how awesome would it have been if it turned out that D&D was like what they did?
Cory Doctorow is a writer and activist who early on was profiled as an avid D&D player in this story from 1985.
The moral panic was mostly laughable. The idea that there were people who were fundamentalist Christians for whom Dungeons & Dragons represented some kind of existential threat to my soul was silly. You could go around and have really satisfying arguments with profoundly ignorant grown-ups.
Over time, the Dungeons & Dragons controversy lost steam. And today, the common thread between D&D players is less likely to include any reported links to violence, and more likely to involve Emmy Awards and literary prizes. Stephen Colbert and writers Ta-Nehisi Coates and Junot Diaz are among the millions of smart, bookish kids who played D&D and shrugged off any sense of panic.
People were bananas. My mom moral panicked. She was way more worried of us getting shanked, or getting caught up in some nonsense.
It was a lot of fun. It also provided them a variety of other skills, leadership skills, negotiation skills.
And for Diaz, as a young immigrant from the Dominican Republic, the game had special meaning.
This was a revolution. Being a bunch of kids of color in a society that tells us that we're nothing, being permitted and are under our own power to be heroic, to have agency, to do the hero stuff, to take